The abrupt sound of her phone broke the morning silence of her bedroom. Taylor Swift cracked her eyes open, silently cursing herself for not switching her phone to silent mode. The clock read 5:47 a.m., too early even for her usual schedule. The name of Jack, her manager, was flashing on the screen. A call at this hour was not a good sign. "Jack? What happened?" she mumbled sleepily, running her hand over her face. "Taylor, turn on CNN. Right now?" The manager's voice sounded tense, almost scared. "I'm on my way to you." A chill ran down the singer's spine. She felt for the remote control and turned on the TV hanging opposite the bed. The bright letters of the news headline instantly drove away the remnants of sleep. Global music giant GME announces acquisition of full rights to entire Taylor Swift catalog. On air, a smiling gray-haired man in an impeccable suit was being interviewed. The caption at the bottom of the screen read, "Richard Stone, CEO of Global Music Empire. Nachmarani, this historic acquisition will allow us to completely reimagine the legacy of one of the greatest artists of our time," he said smugly. "We'd value Taylor Swift's musical genius and plan to breathe new life into her repertoire through collaborations, remixes, and licensing to various brands that—" Taylor froze, feeling the blood drain from her face. It was impossible, absurd. She hadn't sold her rights. After years of fighting to get back the masters of her early albums, after re-recording them to regain control, she would never, under any circumstances, give up her music, her life. "The documents were signed last night, and we have already begun the process of transferring all digital assets," Stone continued, his eyes shining with triumph. Taylor grabbed her phone, noticing the dozens of missed calls and messages that had accumulated while she slept. "Jack, is this some kind of mistake or a prank?" Her voice trembled with poorly concealed panic. "You know I never—" "I know," he interrupted, "but they claim they have documents with your signature. The whole package. Selling the entire catalog, both originals and new versions. GME's lawyers have already sent out notices to all the streaming services. They're moving fast, Taylor. Too fast." The room began to spin. Taylor sank to the edge of the bed, trying to breathe. "My signature? It's a fake. It must be a fake. I'll be there in 15 minutes with Sarah and Mark," Jack replied, naming her top lawyers. "Don't answer your phone. Don't make any statements on social media. Nothing. Got it?" "Yes," she whispered, hanging up and immediately opening Twitter. The hashtag #Taylor Sold Out was already trending, racking up tens of thousands of mentions per minute. Her name was everywhere, accompanied by accusations of selling out, betraying her fans, and being a hypocrite. After all this talk about artist independence, she sold out to a corporation, LOL. Taylor sold out. She talked about fighting for musicians' rights, but she signed the biggest contract in history, classic Taylor. Taylor sold out. She dropped the phone like a poisonous snake and sprinted into the shower, letting the hot water wash away the shock. Her thoughts raced. Someone had to have forged her signature. But who? And how could she prove the forgery if it was so convincing that even GME's lawyers had risked making a public statement? 20 minutes later, her living room resembled a war room. Jack paced nervously, constantly answering calls. Sarah, Taylor's top lawyer for 6 years, was spreading papers on the coffee table. Mark, an intellectual property expert, was typing furiously on his laptop. "They're moving at unprecedented speed," Sarah said, holding out a clipboard with a copy of the document. "Look, this contract is dated last night. Your signature is on all 18 pages. Taylor looked at the document and felt sick. The signature looked perfect. Every curl, every distinctive movement of her hand. It was not a crude forgery. "I've never seen that document," she said firmly. "I never signed anything that even remotely resembled a sale of rights." "We know," Mark nodded, not looking up from the screen. "But legally it looks impeccable. GME wouldn't risk such a public statement if they weren't sure the documents would stand up to scrutiny." "Do you have any enemies in the industry?" Jack asked. Taylor smiled sadly. "After all the battles over my masters, half the labels think I'm a problem." "Richard Stone," Sarah said thoughtfully. "You two met at the gala last month, didn't you? And it wasn't a friendly meeting as far as I remember." Taylor remembered that night. The forced smiles, Stone's cold gaze, his casual comment. "Your independence is only temporary, Ms. Swift. The music industry always comes back." He could have been involved, but how to prove it? The doorbell interrupted her thoughts. A courier with an envelope stood on the threshold. "Express delivery for Miss Swift," he said, holding out a clipboard for signature. Inside the envelope, they found an official notice from GME. The company demanded that they immediately cease any public performances of songs from its catalog, since the rights now belong to them. The letter was accompanied by a check for an astronomical amount, $400 million, Jack whispered. Do they seriously think you'd sell your music for money? Your life? We have a problem, Mark said suddenly, turning the laptop so that the screen faced the others. Taylor's email was open, her official account for business correspondence. What is this? She asked, leaning toward the screen. An email chain, Mark replied, scrolling through the conversation. Between you and GME's legal department, negotiating the terms of the deal, lasting almost a month. Here are your answers. Questions about the details of the contract. Someone didn't just forge your signature, they hacked your email and created an entire history of the negotiations. It's impossible. Taylor shook her head. Check IP addresses, metadata. I'm already checking, Mark nodded. But whoever did this is a top-notch professional. These emails were sent from devices registered to you, from your regular IP addresses. Taylor, we need to come up with a strategy, Sarah said, gathering up the papers. We can countersue, challenge the authenticity of the signature, demand an expert opinion. But that'll take months, Jack interrupted. They'll have time to reformat the entire catalog, make brand deals, launch remixes. Even if we win, the reputational damage will be irreparable. And what do you suggest? Taylor asked sharply. Jack exchanged glances with the lawyers before answering. Accept the deal. $400 million is an unprecedented amount. We'll make a statement that this was a conscious choice on your part of a new creative strategy. Your fan base is quite loyal. Are you serious? Taylor stared at him incredulously. Are you asking me to give up? To admit that I sold my music after everything I went through to get it back? Taylor, be reasonable, Sarah sighed. They created the perfect trap. They hacked the mail, forged the signatures, created the complete illusion of your participation in the negotiations. In the best case, if we prove that this is a falsification, it will take a year or more. During that time, my reputation will be destroyed either way, Taylor finished for her. A heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by the sound of the television. CNN continued to cover the historic deal, now featuring commentary from music critics and other artists. Of course, many will be disappointed, said an older woman, a well-known music critic. But at the end of the day, this is business. No one can blame Taylor for wanting to secure her financial future in such a spectacular way. We all know her image as an artist rights activist was just a marketing ploy. The former label head, with whom Taylor had a public feud, smirked into the camera. This deal just revealed her true priorities. Taylor walked to the window, looking out at the driveway where reporters were already gathering. A news helicopter circled the house. Her phone continued to blow up with notifications. So, she said, turning to the team, her eyes narrowing, you all think I should capitulate? Accept their lies, take the money, and admit defeat? Jack spread his hands. I don't see a winning strategy, Taylor. The system is rigged against people like you, the loners. GME is a conglomerate with an army of lawyers and connections in every field. They've got it all figured out. Taylor looked at the screen where Richard Stone, with his polished smile and cold eyes, was giving a new interview. Your Honor, we are looking forward to the opportunity to expand the audience of her music. For example, we already have an agreement with a major alcohol producer to use her hit Blank Space in the advertising campaign for a new whiskey. Something snapped inside Taylor. Decades of fighting for her name, her voice, her music. Years of proving to the industry and the world that an artist could control her creativity. Everything she believed in, everything she stood for, was in danger of being destroyed. No, she said firmly, turning away from the television. I won't accept their lies. I won't take their money. And I won't, for God's sake, let my songs advertise whiskey. Taylor, Jack began. I'm not done, she cut him off. If you think I should give up, you don't understand who I am. Her voice was shaking, but her eyes were determined. They didn't just steal my music. They stole my voice, my story. Every song is a piece of my life. She began to pace the room, the energy of anger and determination replacing the shock and confusion. They forged my signature? Great. They hacked my email? Great. They turned everyone against me? Great. She stopped and looked at her team. But they don't know who they're up against. This is my music, and I'm going to fight for it. How? Asked Mark. Legally, our hands are tied. Taylor thought for a moment, then her eyes lit up with that familiar gleam, the same one that appeared when she found the perfect melody or line for a new song. If the legal route is blocked, we'll find another one. She picked up her phone and started scrolling through her contacts. GME has the money and the lawyers, but I have something they don't. What? Sarah asked, doubt in her voice. It's true, Taylor replied, stopping at one of the contacts, and I know someone who can help me solve it. As the team looked at each other in confusion, Taylor pressed the call button. After 3 rings, the other end answered. Carol, this is Taylor Swift. Remember when you said you left GME over ethical differences? I need your help. Now. Taylor turned to face her team, her face filled with unwavering determination. Whatever you decide, I'm going into battle. Alone if necessary, but I won't give up without a fight. Jack looked at her with a mixture of surprise and a hint of admiration. He knew that look, the same one she wore when she fought streaming services, wrote open letters to tech giants, re-recorded her albums. Richard Stone and GME had just made a fatal mistake. They woke Taylor Swift at dawn, and now they had to face her fury. The midday sun was pouring into Taylor's living room, but inside the house the atmosphere was that of a military headquarters under siege. Reporters could be seen swarming the gates of her estate like piranhas smelling blood. The official statement from Taylor's team that the singer was looking into the situation and will comment soon only added fuel to the fire. After a tense conversation, her lawyers retreated to the next room, leaving Taylor alone with Jack. He looked at her with concern. I don't agree with your decision, he said quietly, but I understand why you can't give in. Taylor nodded, clutching her phone. Carol will be here in an hour. She worked in GME's legal department for 5 years and left 3 months ago. If anyone knows about Stone's underhanded dealings, it's her. Jack shook his head. Taylor, this is risky. We don't know if we can trust her. What if she's a spy for Stone? Or worse, sells your story to the tabloids. I checked her out, Taylor replied, pulling up a screenshot of the email on her phone. She messaged me in May, asking to meet up and talk about unethical practices at GME. I was on tour at the time and postponed the meeting. If only I'd known. Don't blame yourself, Jack put his hand on her shoulder. You couldn't have foreseen such an attack. The TV on the wall, which had been playing the news at a low volume, switched to a new story. Taylor winced as she saw her photo next to footage of Richard Stone shaking hands with her while sealing some kind of deal. Look at him, she said through clenched teeth. He's enjoying every second of his triumph. Sarah emerged from the next room, her face expressing professional concern. We've analyzed their strategy, she said, handing Taylor a folder of documents. They're proactive. They're sending out notices to all platforms and partners as we speak. Spotify has already received an official order to change the copyright holder to GME. Taylor opened the folder and looked through the first few pages, her face growing darker with each passing second. So they want more than just my new versions? They even want the songs I haven't recorded yet? All future reworks? The contract is written as if you knowingly and voluntarily gave up everything. Sarah nodded. Including future rights, derivative works, any digital or physical media. Total surrender. Taylor slammed the folder shut, her hands shaking with anger. I need to make a statement, she said firmly. Right now, before they steal everything completely. Taylor, no! Jack and Sarah exclaimed almost in unison. Without a clear strategy, any public statement will only make the situation worse, Sarah added. You'll give them more grounds for lawsuits, perhaps even for libel. What if I just tell the truth? That my signature was forged? That I never signed this contract? Then they'll show you forged emails, documents with your signatures that the forensics team will study for months, and thousands of your fans will decide that you're lying, trying to get out of the deal you made yourself, Jack explained. Taylor picked up a glass of water from the table and took a sip. Her mind raced, searching for a way out of the trap. Suddenly, a security guard announced a visitor over the intercom. It's Carol, Taylor said, rising. Let her come in. A few minutes later, a woman in her mid-30s with a short haircut and a tense expression entered the living room. She was dressed in a formal business suit and carried a leather bag. Miss Swift, she began, extending her hand. Carol Bennett. Thank you for trusting me. Just Taylor, please, the singer replied, shaking hands. This is my manager, Jack, and lawyer, Sarah. Carol nodded to them and got straight to the point. I saw the news. What GME is doing is their classic way of working, where they want to get something at any cost. Do you know who is behind the document forgery? Taylor asked, pointing Carol to the sofa. Carol sat up, opened her bag, and took out her tablet. There's only one person with both the motive and the resources, Richard Stone. I've worked directly on his team, and I've seen what he does to artists who refuse to play by his rules. She unlocked her tablet and opened a folder of files. I've been researching Stone for the last 6 months of my tenure at GME. I was planning on going to the SEC, but they got to me first. What do you mean? Sarah asked tensely. Carol smiled wryly. Classic GME method. Fabricate an internal leak of confidential data, threaten to sue, agree to a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for a payoff. She looked at Taylor. I signed, took the money and left. But I kept copies of the documents, just in case. It's illegal, Sarah said. It's a breach of confidentiality. Less illegal than what Stone is doing now, Carol countered, turning the tablet toward Taylor. Here, look. Internal GME correspondence on the Redbird project. I think it's easy to guess who we're talking about. Taylor looked through the emails, her eyes widening. It talks about neutralizing the main opponent of the streaming model. Is that really about me? Carol nodded. After your campaign against streaming services, and especially after the successful re-recording of the albums, Stone saw you as an existential threat. You proved that an artist can beat the system. This is a dangerous precedent for someone like him. Jack whistled, looking over Taylor's shoulder at the papers. There's a whole strategy to discredit. God, they've been planning this for months. Ever since your re-recorded albums started making more money than the originals, Carol confirmed, you changed the rules of the game, and they decided you had to be stopped. But how did they manage to forge my signature so perfectly? Taylor asked, looking through the documents further. Carol quickly flipped through several files and stopped at the page with photos. Look, here. Operation Handwriting Sample Collection. They purposefully created situations where you had to sign something. Charity events, fan meetups, private concerts. Oh my God, Taylor whispered, recognizing the photos as moments from the past few months. I was just signing autographs, and they were collecting samples of your handwriting to create the perfect forgery. Carol finished for her. They have a whole department of technical experts who deal with such tasks. Sarah, who had been listening with growing horror, finally couldn't bear it any longer. This is organized crime. We can contact the FBI about this. Carol shook her head. You can try, but keep in mind. Stone finances half the political elite. He has connections everywhere, from Hollywood to Washington. The investigation will be slowed down at every step, and in the meantime, they will have time to completely change the structure of the rights to your catalog. Taylor stood up and went to the window. She saw that the number of reporters at her gate had doubled. The news helicopter was still circling the estate. Then the usual avenues of struggle are closed to us, she said quietly. Legally, we'll be bogged down in months of litigation that will probably be sabotaged. Law enforcement could be under Stone's influence. She turned to the others. Then I'll have to act outside the box. What do you mean? Jack asked warily. Taylor picked up her phone and began scrolling through her contacts. If Stone is using dirty tricks against me, I need to find a way to expose his machinations publicly so he can't cover it up. She settled on one of her contacts. I need help from someone who knows GME inside out even better than Carol does. Who are you talking about? Sarah asked. Michael Dorsett, former CTO of GME, Taylor replied. He left a year ago and founded a blockchain and copyright startup. We met at a digital rights conference. If anyone can help us track down how they hacked my email and created the fake correspondence, it's him. Carol looked impressed. Dorsett is an excellent choice. He is a cybersecurity genius and has been openly critical of Stone's methods since leaving. Taylor pressed the call button. After a few rings, a male voice rang out. Taylor Swift, I was just reading about your deal. Michael, I need your help. Taylor got straight to the point. I didn't sign this contract. It's a fake, and I need someone who can prove it technically. There was a short pause, after which Michael replied, I thought so. Stone was up to his old trick. There was undisguised contempt in his voice. When can we meet? Come as soon as possible. I'll send you the address and a security pass. I'll be there in 2 hours, Michael replied and hung up. Taylor turned to the others. While he's on his way, I need to find out one more thing. Carol, do you know anyone currently employed at GME who might be able to help us covertly? Someone with access to internal documents? Carol thought, there's a girl in the legal department, Alicia Garcia. She was against the Redbird project, but she was forced to participate under threat of being fired. She wrote to me in desperation last week. Can you contact her? I need to know where the original contracts are physically stored and what other documents they have prepared. Carol nodded and took out her phone. Jack, Taylor continued, contact our contacts at the streaming services. I want to know what notices they've received from GME and what actions they plan to take. Sarah, draft a template injunction blocking any changes to my catalog until we figure this out. Even if we have to file dozens of lawsuits in different jurisdictions, we should slow them down. As the team sprang into action, Taylor glanced back at the TV screen. CNN was showing an interview with a music analyst who was earnestly explaining how the GME deal would redefine the business model for top artists. Scoundrels, she whispered, feeling determination growing inside her. You think you've won? This is just the beginning. 3 hours later, Taylor's office had become a makeshift resistance headquarters. Printouts were spread out on the desk, several laptops were on, and phones were ringing. Michael Dorsett, a thin man with a keen eye, was analyzing Taylor's hacked emails, his special equipment connected to her computer. "This is professional work," he said, not looking up from the screen. "They used advanced spoofing techniques to make the emails look like they were sent from your devices. But there's something interesting here." He pointed to lines of code that looked like random characters to Taylor. "See this metadata? It contains hidden identifiers. It's like digital fingerprints, and some of them point to GME's internal systems." "Can this be used as evidence of a break-in?" Taylor asked hopefully. "In a regular court. Maybe after months of expert examinations. But we need something more convincing and faster." Michael thought about it. "Oh, I have one idea. I still have the administrative access codes to the GME backup servers. They changed the passwords, but the system architecture remains the same." At that moment, Carol, who had been talking on the phone in the corner of the room, came up to them with wide eyes. "I just spoke to Alicia. She claims that the original signed documents are kept in Stone's personal safe. And one more thing. There is a recording of a meeting in which Stone discussed a plan to falsify the documents with a team of lawyers and techies." "A recording?" Taylor asked. "Does it physically exist?" "Yes, on a secure GME server. Alicia says Stone insisted on internal discussions with no paper trail, but all meetings in the main room are automatically recorded for corporate security purposes. The recording from June 15th is specifically labeled Project KP Strategic Planning." Michael looked up from his computer. "June 15th? That's the day before the fake email correspondence began to be created, Taylor. If we get our hands on that record, that would be direct evidence of collusion," Sarah finished for him. "But how can we access that recording?" Michael and Carol exchanged glances. "Theoretically," Michael began slowly, "I could remotely connect to the GME servers through my old accesses. But it's risky. If they track the connection..." "That would be illegal," Sarah warned. "Unauthorized access to corporate servers is a federal crime." Taylor closed her eyes for a moment, considering the situation. When she opened them again, her gaze was determined. "What if Alicia gives us her access? It will be an authorized entry of an active employee." "It would still be a violation of corporate policy," Sarah said, "but it wouldn't be a federal crime." Carol shook her head. "Alicia doesn't have access to these records. Only the upper echelon of management and security." "Then I'll use my access," Michael said decisively, "but I'll do it as carefully as possible. A one-time connection through a chain of proxy servers. They won't be able to track it." "Are you sure?" Taylor asked. "I don't want to put you at risk." Michael looked at her with a half-smile. "You know why I left GME? Because Stone was forcing me to build systems that violated artists' privacy. Systems to spy, hack, manipulate. I refused, and he tried to destroy my career." He turned to the screen. "So yeah, I absolutely want to help you expose him." Taylor nodded gratefully and turned to Jack, who had just finished a phone call. "What's the news from streaming services?" "They suck," Jack admitted. "Spotify and Apple Music have already received legal notices from GME. They have to change the copyright holder within 48 hours. So have Amazon and the rest. Nobody wants to deal with GME's lawyers, especially when the contract looks legitimate." 48 hours, Taylor repeated. "That means we don't have much time." At that moment, her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. "Check your email. Information about Stone's personal motives against you. Friend." Taylor frowned and opened her email. The new message only contained an attachment, a PDF document without a signature. She opened it and began to read, her eyes widening in surprise. "You're not going to believe this," she told the others. "This is an internal GME memo from last month. In it, Stone discusses with the board a strategic acquisition of the TS catalog as part of a larger plan to sell the entire company to a Chinese media conglomerate. My catalog is the key asset that doubles the deal's value. So it's not just a personal vendetta, it's a business strategy," Jack concluded. "He's using your music to inflate the price of GME before selling it. And he gets paid huge bonuses for it," Taylor added, continuing to read. "It says here that if the deal with the Chinese is successfully closed, Stone gets a golden parachute of $50 million and a position in the new company." Michael whistled. Now it's clear why he's taking such a risk. It's not just a fight with you, it's his financial future. "Who sent you this document?" Sarah asked. "I don't know," Taylor replied. "It's just signed friend." "Check the file's metadata," Michael suggested, walking up to her. He took her phone and smiled after a few seconds. "It looks like this document was created on a computer with the username Mzhang." "Wait a minute. Melissa Zhang? She works in the secretariat of the board of directors of GME. Very quiet, always in the shadows, but she sees and hears everything. Another potential ally within GME, Taylor noted. It could be a trap, Jack warned. Information planted to make you make a mistake. Or this could be the trump card we need, Taylor countered. If GME sells my rights to a Chinese conglomerate without my consent, it's not just a scam, it's a national cultural security issue. Politicians and regulators are going to listen a lot more carefully. She turned to Michael. How soon can you get access to that meeting recording? If everything goes smoothly, within an hour. I need to set up a secure channel and bypass several levels of authentication. Go ahead, Taylor nodded. Carol, contact Alicia again. I need all the information on what agreements GME has already made regarding my catalog, who they are negotiating with, what deals are in the pipeline. As the team worked, Taylor retreated to the window. The sun was beginning to set, but the crowd of journalists at the gate was not diminishing. Her phone vibrated constantly with social media notifications and missed calls. She opened Twitter and saw that the hashtag Taylor Sold Out had been replaced by a new one. What is Taylor hiding? Why is she silent? Why isn't she issuing a statement? What is Taylor Swift hiding? They're trying to control the narrative, she said quietly to herself. Make me look guilty no matter what I do. Suddenly an idea struck her. She turned to the others. Sofori, Michael, continue working on getting the recording. But at the same time, I need your help with something else. Is it possible to prove that the email correspondence was falsified in a way that would be clear, not only to technical experts, but to ordinary people as well? Michael thought for a second. There are several obvious discrepancies in the letter headings. If they were highlighted and explained, yes, it could be done quite clearly. Great, Taylor nodded. I'm going to do something they don't expect me to do. Instead of hiding, I'm going to go public, but on my terms. What are you up to? Jack asked warily. Instagram Live. Now, with this evidence we already have, I will show the world what is going on behind the scenes of GME and how they fabricated this deal. Taylor, it's risky, Sarah countered. Without hard evidence like that meeting tape, they could sue you for libel. I'm not going to directly accuse them of fraud, Taylor explained. I'm just going to show the facts we have and ask public questions. Why does my signature look exactly the same on all 18 pages? Why does the email metadata contain traces of GME's systems? Why did I learn about the deal from the news and not from my team? Jack hesitated. This could work, or it could backfire on you entirely. We have no choice, Taylor said firmly. If I keep quiet for another day, GME will have ingrained their narrative so deeply that no one will care about the truth. We need to act now. Michael nodded. I can quickly prepare a simple visual explanation of email and signature forgery. Technical details, but in an accessible form. Great, Taylor turned to Carol. Do you have any documents that can be shown publicly without violating the confidentiality agreement? Carol thought. There are a few general company strategy memos that don't mention specific names but outline an approach to neutralizing artist activists. We can show you those. She began scrolling through the files on her tablet when Taylor's phone suddenly rang. A name flashed on the screen that made everyone in the room catch their breath. Richard Stone. Taylor raised her hand for silence and pressed record. Her eyes narrowed like a predator about to pounce. This was the moment of truth, the first time she would speak directly to the man trying to steal her life. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the answer button and said in an icy tone, Mr. Stone, what a surprise. I think you should know that this conversation is being recorded. Miss Swift, Richard Stone's voice was measured and controlled, with just the slightest hint of patronage. A recording of our conversation? I don't think that's necessary between business partners. We're not partners, Taylor snapped, turning on the speakerphone so everyone in the room could hear. I never signed your contract. There was a short pause. Michael made a sign that he had begun recording the call on his equipment for later analysis. I understand your confusion, Stone said slowly. When deals of this magnitude become public, artists often feel uncomfortable with the reaction of fans. But the documents speak for themselves. We acted strictly within the boundaries of our agreement, an agreement that never existed, Taylor said, tightening her grip on the phone. Why are you calling, Mr. Stone? To make sure your scam is going according to plan? Another pause, longer this time. When Stone spoke again, his voice was colder. Chicktonum, I'm calling to offer a peaceful solution to the situation. Publicly challenging the contract will not benefit either you or me. Let's meet in person, without lawyers and managers. Just you and me. I'm sure we'll find a compromise that will suit both parties. Taylor exchanged glances with the team. Jack shook his head vigorously, a clear sign of refusal. But Michael and Carol nodded. They saw this as an opportunity. Where and when? Taylor asked, ignoring Jack's protesting gestures. This evening, Stone quickly replied, clearly pleased by her agreement. At GME headquarters in my office. Say 7 p.m., I'll send a car. In a public place, Taylor countered. And without your car, I'll come myself. It's not wise, there's too much press around and… Fairmont conference room at 7:30 p.m., Taylor interrupted. Or no meeting at all. After a long pause, Stone reluctantly agreed. Okay, Fairmont 1930. Come alone. See you there, Taylor replied shortly and hung up. Jack immediately exploded. Are you crazy? This is obviously a trap. He wants to intimidate you personally, to force you to sign some new agreement. Or this is our chance, Taylor interrupted. We'll get what we don't have, a direct confrontation with Stone. His words, his reactions. She turned to Michael. Can you have all the evidence of the rigging ready by 7 p.m.? Michael nodded. Already working on it, and I have a better idea. He pointed to his laptop. I'm almost there, accessing the GME servers. We'll have a recording of that meeting in an hour. Good, Taylor glanced around at the team. Here's what we'll do. I'll actually meet with Stone, but not for secret negotiations. Her eyes glittered. For a public revelation. The luxurious Fairmont conference room glowed with soft light from crystal chandeliers. Taylor had arrived early and had personally checked every detail of the impromptu stage. In the center of the room stood a long table with 2 microphones, one for her, one for Stone. Around the perimeter were chairs already occupied by invited guests. Among them, Taylor noticed several major GME shareholders to whom Carol had sent anonymous invitations for an emergency meeting on the TS catalog acquisition crisis. There were journalists present too, not the scoop-hunting types at her gate, but serious business reporters from the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and other publications specializing in corporate finance. Stone showed up at exactly 7:03 p.m., wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit and a confident smile. However, that smile quickly disappeared when he saw the packed house and Taylor Swift standing at the microphone table. What is this? He hissed, approaching Taylor. We agreed to meet privately. I never agreed to a secret meeting, Taylor replied calmly, nodding toward the chair opposite. Sit down, Mr. Stone. We have much to discuss. Stone paused, assessing the situation. He was clearly weighing his options. Leave. That would seem like an admission of guilt. Stay. Risky, but perhaps he could control the conversation. Ms. Swift, I don't think this is a productive format for resolving our differences, he began in a conciliatory tone. And I think publicity is exactly what this situation calls for, Taylor retorted, switching on her microphone. Her voice carried throughout the room. After all, you were the one who made the public announcement about purchasing my catalog. Without warning, without my knowledge. The reporters leaned forward, sensing that something more than just another press conference was brewing. GME shareholders exchanged worried glances. Stone, realizing it was too late to back out, put on his trademark smile and took a seat across from Taylor. Turning on the microphone, he began. I appreciate your candor, Mrs. Swift. However, I must remind you that all of our actions were based on a fully signed and legally binding contract, which… That's the contract I wanted to talk about, Taylor interrupted, motioning to her assistant. The young man pressed a button on his laptop, and an image of the first page of the contract with her signature appeared on the large screen behind them. That's the document, right? Stone glanced at the screen and nodded. Absolutely right. The contract, signed by you in all the designated places. Taylor leaned forward. Interesting, isn't it, Mr. Stone? A document I'd never seen before this morning. A document that suddenly appeared with my signature on all 18 pages. She paused. With a perfectly identical signature, a magnified image of her 3 signatures from different pages appeared on the screen, superimposed on each other. They matched to within a millimeter. How do you explain that my signature on each page is absolutely identical, right down to the pen pressure and angle? This is physically impossible when signing a document naturally. Stone tugged at his shirt collar slightly, but his voice remained firm. Ms. Swift, modern digital signature techniques often produce such coincidences. It does not prove anything other than that you may have signed the document electronically. An interesting theory, Taylor nodded. Only the contract itself states that it was signed physically, in the presence of a notary. She pointed to the relevant paragraph that appeared on the screen. Or was the notary also virtual? A murmur ran through the room. Journalists scribbled feverishly in their notebooks. Stone straightened up. These are legal details that can be discussed in the relevant authorities. The fact remains that the contract exists, your signature is on it, and our lawyers have confirmed its legitimacy. Speaking of lawyers, Taylor made another sign, and a chain of emails between her and GME appeared on the screen. These emails are part of your evidence, aren't they? Supposedly my correspondence with your legal department, where we discussed the terms of the deal? Stone looked closely at the screen. Absolutely right. Weekly negotiations, during which all the details were agreed upon. Taylor smiled and nodded to Michael, who was sitting in the front row. He typed a few keys on his laptop, and the technical headers of the emails appeared on the screen with lines of code highlighted. Mr. Stone, may I introduce you to Michael Dorsett, former CTO of GME. Michael, could you please explain to the audience what we are seeing on the screen? Michael stood up from his seat and walked up to the microphone. What you are seeing is metadata from emails purportedly sent from Ms. Swift's devices. However, upon closer inspection, it is clear that they contain specific identifiers unique to GME's internal systems. He pointed to the highlighted lines of code. These fingerprints indicate that the emails were created within GME's corporate network and then artificially marked as having been sent from Mrs. Swift's devices. Stone looked genuinely alarmed for the first time. He quickly got his bearings. Mr. Dorsett was fired from GME for corporate espionage. His statements cannot be considered objective or reliable. I voluntarily resigned and founded a successful company in the field of digital rights protection, Michael countered. And these technical data speak for themselves. Any independent expert will confirm my findings. GME shareholders began chatting nervously, many taking out their phones and hastily searching for something on the internet. Taylor returned to the microphone. Mr. Stone, I did not sign your contract. I have not corresponded with your lawyers. This is all a carefully planned fraud. She paused. But the real question is, why? Why take such a risk? What makes my catalog so valuable to you? Stone straightened up, regaining control of the situation. A music catalog of this scale and cultural significance is a valuable asset for any company. We have made a favorable commercial offer. If you believe there has been a misunderstanding, I am prepared to discuss the terms of termination of the contract, possibly with appropriate compensation for the inconvenience. Taylor shook her head. Misunderstanding? You call deliberately falsifying documents a misunderstanding? She nodded again to her assistant, and a document marked confidential GME Board of Directors only appeared on the screen. Let's look at the real reason. Stone turned sharply to the screen, his face pale as he recognized the document. An internal memo on the strategic importance of acquiring the Taylor Swift catalog for the upcoming sale of GME to a Chinese conglomerate. Where did you get this? He asked hoarsely, forgetting about the microphone in the audience. You have a leak, Mr. Stone, Taylor said simply. As this memo shows, you don't want my catalog for innovative development or new creative possibilities. You want it to double the price of GME before selling it to a foreign company, and you personally get a $50 million bonus for doing so. The reporters looked up from their notepads almost in unison, stunned by the revelation. GME shareholders looked shocked. Many of them had apparently not been informed of the company's plans to sell. Stone finally pulled himself together. This document, even if genuine, is GME's proprietary business information. Its illegal acquisition and public disclosure is a federal crime. He tried to sound confident. Ms. Swift, you're painting yourself into a corner. I offered a peaceful solution, but now, Taylor interrupted again, her voice ringing with tension. We get to the interesting part. She paused for a long moment, looking Stone straight in the eye. Project Redbird meeting transcript, June 15th. Stone's face changed. For the first time all evening, his mask of control fell away completely, revealing pure, unvarnished fear. That's impossible, he whispered. These records are stored on GME's secure servers? Taylor finished for him. Yes, that's where they were stored. Michael pressed a button on his laptop, and the room was filled with the sound of the recording of the meeting. Stone's voice was clear and recognizable. The usual legal approach won't work here. Swift will never sign voluntarily. We need an alternative solution. James, has your team prepared samples of her signature? Excellent. Samantha, where are we with the virtual presence? We need a flawless digital history of the negotiations. The recording lasted almost a minute, with voices from various participants in the meeting discussing the technical details of document forgery, the creation of false correspondence, and even a plan to discredit Taylor in the media if she tried to challenge the contract. The room was dead silent. All eyes were on Richard Stone, who was staring at the tape as if he had seen a ghost. When the recording ended, Taylor spoke again, her voice quiet but every word carried throughout the room. Mr. Stone, you conspired to commit fraud, intellectual property theft, and grand larceny. She turned to the room. All for your own personal gain at the expense of GME shareholders who were unaware of your plans to sell the company, and at the expense of the artist whose work you attempted to steal. Stone jumped to his feet, throwing the microphone off the table. This is an illegal recording. Corporate espionage. You will all be held accountable. He turned to the shareholders. This is a provocation organized by competitors. Don't believe a single word. But it was too late. One of the shareholders, an elderly man in a conservative suit, stood up and said coldly, Mr. Stone, as the holder of 8% of GME shares, I demand an immediate emergency meeting of the board of directors. Another shareholder, a woman with a sharp gaze, added, Soren, in the suspension of your powers until all the circumstances are clarified. Journalists no longer tried to take notes. Many simply recorded the events on their phones. It was an unprecedented case of corporate exposure happening live on air. Taylor took the microphone again. Shut ladies and gentlemen, I am a musician. I write songs, I perform on stage, I interact with fans. I did not want to become a detective or an exposer of corporate crimes. She paused. But when my music, my voice, my stories are stolen, I will defend myself in any way possible. She turned to Stone, who stood frantically typing something on his phone. Mr. Stone, I give you a choice. Either GME immediately issues a public statement that there was no deal, that all the documents were fake, and issues a formal apology, or this evidence goes to the SEC, the FBI, and of course to all your Chinese partners with whom you negotiated the sale of the company. A heavy silence fell over the room. Stone, all respectability gone, looked cornered. His eyes darted between the shareholders, the reporters, and Taylor. You don't understand who you're dealing with, he finally said through gritted teeth. You may have evidence, but I have connections. Power. You'll regret going against me. Taylor didn't flinch. Is that a threat, Mr. Stone? In front of dozens of witnesses and the press? She took a step forward. I'm not afraid of you, and I'm no longer afraid of your industry. Artists have been pawns in the games of the likes of you for too long. That's changing. A journalist from the front row raised his hand. Miss Swift, Wall Street Journal. What will you do next? Taylor turned to him. I am suing GME for attempted fraud, demanding a full investigation into Mr. Stone's actions, and asking regulators to review the legality of the pending sale of an American music company to a foreign conglomerate without proper notice to shareholders. Another journalist jumped up. Mr. Stone, will you resign? But Stone was no longer in the room. Taking advantage of the moment, he slipped out unnoticed through a side door, leaving his assistants to look at each other in confusion. One of the GME shareholders, a large man with a commanding voice, turned to Taylor. Miss Swift, as a representative of the GME Institutional Investor Group, I would like to assure you that we have not been informed of these methods. We are interested in resolving this situation immediately. Taylor nodded. I am open to dialogue, but first all notifications sent to streaming services and partners must be revoked. My catalog must remain under my control without any changes. Of course, the shareholder agreed. I will personally ensure that this is done within an hour. The reporters continued to shout questions, but Taylor raised her hand for silence. The last thing I want to say today, she said, looking around the room, this isn't just about me. It's about every artist who's had their rights violated by corporate giants, every musician who's been told to sign or disappear, every artist who's had their voice silenced for the sake of profit. She paused, her voice growing stronger. I use my resources and my platform to advocate for myself today. But what about those who don't have those resources? She turned to the cameras, which were now broadcasting the event live on multiple channels. The industry needs to change. Transparency, respect for creators, fair distribution of value. These aren't just nice words. They're necessary conditions for a healthy culture to exist. Applause began to break out in the room. At first it was timid, then it became more and more confident. Even some GME shareholders joined in the applause. Taylor glanced at her watch. It was less than an hour into the meeting, but the music industry would never be the same. Phones all over the room were lit up with notifications. The story was spreading like wildfire. At that moment, Carol ran into the room, making her way through the crowd of reporters to Taylor, her face glowing with excitement. Taylor, she breathed, approaching. iTunes and Spotify just called. They're suspending all rights changes to your catalog, and CNN has already launched a special called The Music Conspiracy of the Century. But that wasn't the point. The real victory was reflected in the looks on everyone's faces. A mixture of respect, admiration, and most importantly, recognition of the truth. For the first time in a crazy day, Taylor allowed herself to smile. She hadn't just won a battle for her music, she had launched a revolution. And as she finally left the room, hundreds of notifications on her phone signaled that the hashtag TaylorExposed had been replaced by a new one, Taylor Triumph. The world watched David defeat Goliath and gave him a standing ovation. The evening sky over New York was a blaze of purple as Taylor walked out of the Fairmont Hotel with Michael, Carol, and Jack. A crowd of reporters, several times larger than before, greeted them with flashing cameras and a barrage of questions. But Taylor no longer felt like a cornered quarry. She walked with her head held high, smiling despite her fatigue. "Miss Swift, how are you feeling after such a dramatic confrontation?" shouted a reporter from CNN. "As someone who stood up for what was rightfully hers," Taylor said, pausing on the steps, "I'm grateful to everyone who supported me in this fight and to everyone who helped bring the truth to light." "What's going to happen to Richard Stone?" asked a reporter from MSNBC. "That's up to the GME board and possibly law enforcement to decide." Taylor paused. "But today we all saw what happens when corporate greed collides with the truth." Her phone kept buzzing with messages of support. Fellow musicians, producers, even performers she had never met in person, sent her words of solidarity and admiration. Jack showed her his phone screen, a tweet from Spotify management. "We confirm that all rights to the Taylor Swift 3 catalog remain with the artist. No changes to the copyright holder have been made or are planned." "You did it," Jack said quietly, shaking her hand. "I'm sorry I doubted you." Taylor smiled. "You were just doing your job, looking out for my interests. But you went against all advice," he noted. "And you were right. Not against everyone." Taylor nodded toward Michael and Carol, who were standing nearby. "Without them, none of this would have happened." Suddenly, a young man in a courier uniform pushed his way through the crowd of journalists. "Miss Swift, urgent delivery." He handed Taylor an envelope with the logo of the law firm that handled GME. Taylor opened it and quickly scanned the contents. "What's there?" Jack asked warily. "An official statement from GME," Taylor replied, handing him the document. "They admit the contract was falsified, offer their deepest apologies for the misunderstanding, and rescind all notices of ownership change. They are also prepared to compensate for any moral damages caused." "It's been less than 2 hours, Michael whistled. "The shareholders are really pissed." Taylor's smartphone vibrated with a new notification. She glanced at the screen and her eyes widened. "What is it?" Carol asked. "Breaking news from the Wall Street Journal," Taylor responded. "Richard Stone has been ousted as CEO of GME. The company's shares have fallen 17% after a public contract rigging scandal." "This is just the beginning," Carol said. "When all the details come out, the shareholders will file a class action lawsuit against him personally." Taylor's limousine pulled up to the hotel steps. She turned to the reporters. "Thank you for your attention. I will publish the full statement later today." Already in the car, Jack received another message and whistled. "Taylor, you've had calls from Bloomberg, CNBC, Fox Business, and even 60 Minutes. Everyone wants an exclusive interview about your fight against the corporate giant." Taylor shook her head. "Not now. I have a better idea." "Which one?" Jack asked. "Instead of talking about the problem, let's solve it." Taylor looked at Michael. "Your blockchain startup. It's about protecting the rights of musicians, right?" Michael nodded. "Yes, we are developing a system that will allow artists to retain full control over their works, even when selling licenses. Blockchain technology guarantees transparency of all transactions." "I need to know more," Taylor said. "But first, I have one more urgent matter to attend to." 3 hours later, Taylor's recording studio was buzzing with activity. Her personal team and outside experts were setting up equipment for the live broadcast. A microphone and a simple acoustic guitar were set up in the center of the room. "We're on air in 5 minutes, the technical director announced. "Over 1 million viewers have already connected, and the number's growing." Taylor sat in the corner, making final notes on her notepad. She looked up at Jack. "Are all the lawyers in touch?" "Yes, they are ready to accept the first applications as soon as you announce the fund." "Great," Taylor nodded, standing up. "Time to get started." She took her place in front of the camera, picked up her guitar, and nodded to the cameraman. A red light flashed, signaling the start of the broadcast. "Hello, everyone," Taylor smiled at the camera. "Thank you for joining me tonight. It's been a challenging day." She paused, choosing her words. "Many of you have heard about what happened, about the attempt to steal my voice, my songs, my life. I am grateful for the incredible support I have received from you." She ran her hand over the strings of her guitar. "But today I want to talk about more than just my victory. I want to talk about the system that allows these things to happen." Taylor began to quietly strum the chords. "For years, the music industry has created rules that put corporations above artists. For years, we've been told that we should be grateful for the opportunity to share our creativity, even if it means we get little in return. For years, young talent has signed onerous contracts because they didn't know their rights, didn't have the resources to fight. Her playing became more confident, turning into a melody. I've been able to protect myself today because I have a platform, because I'm heard by millions, because I can afford the best experts. She nodded toward Michael and Carol. But what's an artist to do if they don't have that? Taylor put down her guitar and looked straight into the camera. That's why I'm creating the Musicians' Rights Defense Fund. The initial capital is $10 million from my personal funds. The fund will provide legal assistance to artists whose rights are violated, finance educational programs about intellectual property rights, and support technology projects that make the industry more transparent. A wave of comments and emojis of support swept across the network. I'm pleased to announce that several colleagues from the music industry have already joined the initiative, Taylor continued, and Michael Dorsett's company will become a technology partner of the fund, developing a blockchain platform to protect the rights of artists. She picked up the guitar again. But now I want to do something else. Today, when I thought I might lose my music, I wrote a new song. It's called Not My Signature, and it will be the first song whose rights will be protected by this new technology. Taylor began to play the intro, and then her voice, clear and strong, filled the room. They thought I would give up without a fight. I'll sign. I'll give my heart. But it wasn't my signature. It wasn't my deal with the devil. The song was a roller coaster of emotion, from the vulnerability of loneliness to the triumph of victory. Taylor channeled the day's experiences into it: betrayal, fear, determination, and finally liberation. As the final chord faded into the air, the stream chat went silent, then exploded with thousands of excited comments. "Thank you," Taylor said, putting her guitar down. "And now for the official part. As of now, the Foundation's website is open for applications. If you're an artist who's faced copyright infringement, who's been forced to sign an unfair contract, who's been threatened for standing up for yourself, please contact us. You're not alone in this fight anymore." She paused. "Additionally, I announced the creation of a special commission to investigate cases of fraud and document forgery in the music industry. If you have information about such cases, we guarantee anonymity and protection. It's time to cleanse the industry of unscrupulous players." Taylor smiled. "And now, if you don't mind, I'd like to perform a few more songs. For you. For everyone who believed in me. For everyone who knows the value of their voice." It was already dark outside the studio windows when Taylor finished her impromptu concert. The statistics of the broadcast were astounding. More than 12 million viewers simultaneously, a record for a spontaneous performance without prior advertising. Jack approached her with a tablet in his hands. "You won't believe it." During the broadcast, another 15 million donations from listeners and other artists were received into the fund's account, and the legal department has already received more than 3,000 applications. Taylor leaned back in her chair, suddenly realizing how exhausted she was. "This is just the beginning, Jack. We've touched on something much bigger than just my case. This is a turning point." "Have you checked your phone yet?" he asked. "Artists from all over the world are writing to you. Many are willing to share their stories publicly." Taylor nodded. "None on the way. These stories had to come out someday. This industry has lived in the shadows for too long." Michael walked up to them, his eyes shining with excitement. "Taylor, I just spoke to my team. Your case has given us the perfect use case for our technology. We can create a decentralized copyright verification system that is protected from counterfeiting and hacking. This will change the rules of the game forever." "When can you show us a prototype?" Taylor asked. "At the basic level, in a week. We have been working on this for months. We just lacked a loud example to attract the attention of the industry." Carol, who had been sitting nearby with the phone to her ear, suddenly raised her hand, calling for silence. "Taylor, this is the chairman of GME calling," she whispered, covering the microphone with her hand. "He wants to speak to you personally." Taylor picked up the phone. "Mr. Edwards?" "Yes, this is Taylor Swift." The voice on the other end sounded official, but with notes of sincere remorse. "Ms. Swift, on behalf of the Board of Directors of Global Music Empire, I deeply apologize for the actions taken under the leadership of Richard Stone. The board has voted unanimously to remove him immediately and has launched an internal investigation." "I appreciate your apology, Mr. Edwards," Taylor replied. "But it's not enough. GME needs to completely overhaul its artist policies." "That's exactly what I wanted to talk about," Edwards continued. "The board has asked me to offer you a seat on the working group to reform GME's copyright policy. We want artists to be represented at the highest levels of decision-making." Taylor thought for a moment. "It's an interesting proposal, Mr. Edwards, but I need assurances that this is not a PR stunt, but a real desire for change." "Of course," Edwards agreed. "We are ready to sign a legally binding document on reforms, with specific deadlines and criteria for success." "Then I'll consider your offer," Taylor replied. "Send the details to my team." After the conversation ended, Taylor turned to the others. They are panicking. Shareholders are demanding radical changes to save the company's reputation. Will you accept their offer? Jack asked. Perhaps, Taylor answered thoughtfully. Change has to come from both inside and outside the system. Our foundation will push from the outside, and someone has to push for reform from the inside. At that moment, the studio's technical director ran into the room. Taylor, sorry to intrude, but you have to see this. He turned on a large screen on the wall, and a social media image appeared. The hashtag #Taylor Revolution was trending worldwide at #1, with more than 5 million mentions. It was followed by "Yours artist rights" and "Yours just not my signature." But what was most striking was that dozens of famous musicians were publicly posting their stories of abuse, unfair contracts, and corporate pressure. Many ended their posts with the words, "Inspired by Taylor Swift 3, no more silence." It's incredible, Taylor whispered. It's a real movement. Her phone vibrated with a new message. Taylor glanced at the screen and smiled. The International Recording Industry Association just issued an emergency statement. They call for industry dialogue on artist rights and propose new standards for contract transparency. They're panicking, Michael laughed. They're afraid all the skeletons will come out of the closet. And they are right to be afraid, Carol nodded, because that is exactly what will happen. Taylor stood up and walked to the window. Despite the late hour, a crowd of fans had gathered outside the studio, many holding homemade signs that read, "We're with you, Taylor, and the artist revolution starts here." You know what's ironic? She said quietly, her gaze fixed on the window. All I wanted to do was write songs and share them with the world, and I ended up on the front lines of artist rights. Sometimes we're not given a choice, Jack said. If it weren't for you, how many more creative people would have lost their voice? Taylor turned to her team, her eyes shining with unshed tears of exhaustion and pride. I want to publish one last message today. Help me formulate it. A few minutes later, she approved the final text and hit the publish button. Her message appeared on all platforms at once. Today I almost lost my voice. Instead, I found millions of others ready to speak with me. Corporations can forge signatures, but they can't forge our truth. Artists, speak up. Your story matters. Your art is valuable. And you are no longer alone in this fight. Not my signature. Chunkish Artist Revolution. Within a minute, the post had garnered hundreds of thousands of reposts, likes, and comments. It wasn't just a social media post. It was a manifesto for a new era. Taylor's phone rang again. This time, it was the head of Spotify. Taylor, sorry for the late call. We've been following everything that's going on, and we have a proposal. We want to be the first platform to integrate blockchain-based artist protection, and we want you to be the face of this initiative. Taylor smiled as she looked at her team. I'm listening carefully. Outside, fans began singing her songs, their voices rising into the night sky. In the studio, her team was already planning the next steps of the campaign. And on social media, a revolution was unfolding. One that began with a simple morning call and one woman's desire to protect what was rightfully hers. Taylor glanced at her phone, where the notification glowed that her latest post had been shared 1,000,000 times. What had started as a personal tragedy had turned into a triumph not just for her, but for anyone who had ever felt powerless against the system. Tomorrow will be a new day, a day when the rules of the game will begin to change. And for the first time in a long time, these rules will not be written by corporations, but by the creators themselves.